Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today is episode 33, where we're going to be talking about Zoë Kravitz's directorial debut, Blink Twice. There is so much to talk about in this film, Blink Twice. I saw it last night. I'm recording this a few days early because it is Labor Day weekend. This will be coming out on Labor Day Monday if you're in Canada or the US. Is there Labor Day in other countries? I don't think so. I think that is a North American holiday. Here's an interesting question. When you visualize the week or the year, what shape comes to your mind? Think about that for a moment. Think of the year in your head. Do you think of a circle? Do you think of like a list or a checkbox? Do you think of an actual calendar itself? I saw someone post that on maybe Reddit or TikTok, like, what shape do you think of when you think of the year? Oh, that blew my mind. I literally could not visualize. As always, as I always say, there's timestamps below underneath the episode in the description on all the streamers and in the YouTube description as well. If you just want to hear the news, if you just want to listen to the non-spoiler section of Blink Twice, because this is a very hard movie not to spoil, or at least there's only so much you can talk about in this film without spoiling it. But my advice to people would be, if you want to see this movie and you want to see it, I would recommend seeing it without any spoilers. So I hadn't even seen the trailer, really. I think I had watched maybe half of a trailer and I thought, this is interesting. Okay, I don't want to watch anymore. But having said that, like, I did know kind of the premise of the movie, so I knew what the big twists were going to be. But if you don't know anything about Blink Twice, you don't know what the story is, you don't know anything about it, I would go and see it like that, because this would be such a fun movie without any expectations of what you think it's going to be or knowing even the synopsis. So that would be my advice for Blink Twice. But let's get right into the news, because there's lots to chat about. The first piece of news comes from the Insider, who is kind of this Twitter scoop guy that I've talked about before. Well, there's been, rumblings about RDJ's, Robert Downey Jr.'s payday for Doctor Doom. What is he getting coming back to Marvel? What is it actually going to be? Because they have absolutely splashed the cash to get the Russo brothers back, as well as Robert Downey Jr. It was initially reported that he was getting $80 million, and so were the Russo brothers. I think each of them were getting $80 million, or the Russo brothers split the $80 million over two movies, so that's $20 million a movie. But it is actually being reported now, according to the Insider, that Robert Downey Jr. will reportedly be paid $100 million to play Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. He says Kevin Feige approached him about the role about a year ago, and Robert Downey Jr. said, "I looked into the character and went, wow." It's also said that he could end up making $200 million for starring in the films with all of the box office incentives. I posted this on my Instagram for the show on Watcher of All Things with this story. This is so stupid. So many filmmakers would dream of having $100 million budget, let alone like a $50 million budget, or just getting to make a big studio film or a studio film in general. And the fact that one star of the film is going to be getting $100 million for two films is frankly ridiculous to me. I don't think anyone is worth $50 million for a movie. That is insanity. The fact that last year Bob Iger, David Zaslav, all these CEO guys were saying, oh, we can't afford to pay our writers and our actors. Like, it's been hard for us too. And a year ago, they were talking to Robert Downey Jr. about this deal. So the fact that he's gotten $100 million for two movies, they can absolutely afford to pay their actors and writers fairly. This just, oh my God, this payday gets me absolutely riled up. I've been thinking so much recently about like parasocial relationships with celebrities and like, oh, they're good guys because they play the celebrities I enjoy on screen. No, I really am trying to disconnect and turn off that part of my brain and not just worship these people because I see them on my screen or whatever. And I think RDJ, $50 million for each movie and getting $100 million, possibly $200 million for two Avengers movies is so frankly ridiculous and just disgusting capitalism. Just mind-blowing. And he's just won an Oscar, and he's not just going to go make other original films. He's already crawling back to Marvel for a huge payday. Like, that's just so stupid, and it shows, I think, also how desperate Marvel was and how desperate of a creative choice. Just stupid. And it always brings me back to the Oscars. The director of American Fiction saying, he literally pleaded to Hollywood essentially when he was accepting his Oscar, stop making like $200 million movies. Maybe make a few $10 million movies, a few $15 million movies. It's more true than ever how just how gross this is. Oh my God. I feel so yucky reading this. And RDJ, he preaches about artistic shit all the time, and it's just gross. gross. But anyways, here's a little more of a cheery thing that actually got me, frankly, very emotional when I watched it. The trailer for Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, which is a documentary all about the life of Christopher Reeve and his role of Superman, but also mostly his activism and his life after Superman, when he actually suffered a horseback riding accident and he had an injury where he became disabled and slowly paralyzed over the rest of his life. And it's just a very moving trailer. And you hear from his kids, you hear from Glenn Close, who spoke about his relationship with Robin Williams because they were very good friends. As Robin Williams, of course, suffered very dark times in his life before sadly taking his own life. And Christopher Reeve went through a lot of hard times, especially when he was first injured. He went through a really bad depressive spell, I believe, and Robin Williams actually came to the hospital to see him. Like, there's this great story of, as soon as he walked in and saw his tracheotomy tube, Robin Williams said, "Nice tie," and that was the first time kind of Christopher started laughing after the accident, because he had realized his life was forever changed, and it was slowly just things were going to get worse. But he's still so much amazing activism. And I mean, Christopher Reeve is still my favorite Superman. I've watched all of them many times, all of the films, and Christopher Reeve, I think, is just, there's such a hopefulness about his portrayal of Superman. And just the trailer, I implore everyone to go and watch the trailer for it, because it gave me chills. And so many comic book and superhero movies are all about not wanting to be a superhero because it's too much responsibility, but there's such a hopefulness, and that's what Superman is. It's hope. And Christopher Reeve just embodied that also off the screen. And James Gunn, he posted the trailer, of course, because it is a DC documentary, and he said, "Superman, the Christopher Reeve story, is a powerful and incredibly moving film that I can't recommend enough." And he had talked about, I think before the first thing he did, as soon as this was ready, he showed it to the Superman cast before they started filming, I believe, because he wanted everyone to understand what Superman is. Because Christopher Reeve, he embodies what it meant to be Superman. And it's just, oh my God, a mind-blowing trailer, and I cannot wait. So that's out on September 21st and 25th. It's playing in theaters, I believe. I will absolutely be going to see it once, if not twice. I will see it the 21st and 25th. I don't care. I mean, Christopher Reeve was really before I'm born in 2000, but here's a weird memory. I can remember Superman 4, A Quest for Peace, I believe is what it's called, which is, yes, arguably the worst Superman movie of the Christopher Reeve ones, but that's weirdly one of the first movies I can remember renting at a video store that was, 10 minutes away from my house. I can remember as a kid my mom taking me and picking a VHS tape, and Superman 4, Quest for Peace, is such a strange childhood memory for me, that film. And I just remember how much I loved Christopher Reeve as a child, and just how I thought he really was Superman. Like, I did not think there was an actor off screen. I thought this is Superman, like he is real. As a kid, I thought Superman was real because Christopher Reeve was so amazing. I have pictures. I was Superman one Halloween, and I did not take off that Superman mask. My mom has told me a billion times, "You didn't take that mask off forever." That's like how much I loved. I mean, I also did that with like a Batman mask and like Harry Potter glasses. I loved dressing up as my favorite characters, but Superman in particular, there was something about his honesty and just the hopefulness that he brings, that you can be, and it's fitting maybe for the movie we're talking about today, that you can be a person with all this power but still inspire hope instead of abusing that power and trying to be as responsible as possible. So I seriously I cannot wait to watch this documentary. Everybody in the James Gunn Superman movie cast got to see it, as they said, and lots of them have been sharing it on social media and just raving about it, saying how amazing it was, particularly James Gunn. He has said, like, this is such a powerful story, and he would encourage everyone to go watch it because Christopher Reeve was a man that was just larger than life. Some very surprising news that came out this week, and this came out of nowhere for me. I had heard nothing, no mumblings online or anything, no rumors. This was completely out of a blind spot for me. Ted Lasso looks as if it's coming back for a season 4. A Deadline really broke this for me, is that Ted Lasso fans, this is not a drill. In a huge major step, the long-awaited 4th season of Apple TV's hugely popular soccer comedy looks like it's coming back. Warner Brothers Television has picked up the options on the 3 original cast members who had been contracted under the aegis of the UK acting union Equity. So Hannah Waddingham, who plays Rebecca Walton, the owner of AFC Richmond, Brett Goldstein, who plays Roy Kent, and Jeremy Swift, who plays the director of football operations Leslie Higgins. After securing this trio, the studio is expected to start reaching out to Ted Lasso cast members with SAG-AFTRA contracts whose options had expired, so they'll need to make new deals. In addition to co-creators, executive producers Jason Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt, that is believed to include Juno Temple, and we hear from from one of the Ted Lasso's OGs, Phil Dunster, who played Jamie Tart, is apparently not coming back because of scheduling issues. That is really out of nowhere. I mean, we made a huge deal of season 3 being the end for AFC Richmond's story, and I really don't know how I feel about this, because I did feel like after season 1, Ted Lasso it was a little bit diminishing returns for me. I think season 1 was so magical. Season 2 was still pretty good, and then season 3 felt like it really lost its way and just kind of spread itself too thin, and all the characters were, a lot of it was kind of the same as the first 2 seasons, and then we were getting other characters that I don't want to say we didn't care about, but I didn't feel like we needed a whole storyline focusing constantly, and there were just some choices for characters that I was like, okay, this feels really random and kind of not that entertaining. But I am very surprised that a season 4 Ted Lasso, what was it, 2 years ago, a year ago, not even, right? It's been a year since the ending of Ted Lasso season 3, and it's already coming back. It just kind of feels like it's really sucking the life out of that third season. If it is a spin-off and it's not called Ted Lasso, fair enough, I guess. And a lot of people did speculate that there would be spin-offs, maybe called just AFC Richmond or something like that. But I don't want to say I'm like not excited for it, but I'm kind of not. I don't really care. I think I'm happy with where Ted Lasso ended, and I think it was a very good time to end it, because it almost felt like the writers were all just writing into a corner and didn't really know how to jump the shark, as they say, I guess. Am I using that correctly? Jump the shark. They didn't know how to make the show something else. I mean, I like season 1 because it really focuses on the soccer as a soccer fan, and I was like, oh, it's cool to see like a comedy about a soccer team. And then season 2, of course, focuses on the characters because that's who people like, and I get that, but it did feel like season 2 and 3 really did focus away from the soccer, which I wasn't huge on. Ted Lasso coming back for season 4. What do the Lasso heads think? Is that what the fans are called of Ted Lasso? Lassoers? Lass heads? Lassogans? I don't know. Ted Lasso fans, what do you think of season 4 coming back? Do you feel like it takes away from the emotional ending of season 3 of, spoilers, Ted leaves the club and goes back to America because he wants to be a dad for his son? If he goes back and he's just back at AFC Richmond, what is his son going to come play for AFC Richmond? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like 10 years later, his son's a really good player and he decides that his son's going to go play for AFC Richmond, or he gets signed to AFC Richmond. That's actually not a terrible idea. Interesting. Ted Lasso coming back. Jenna Ortega said that she thinks she auditioned for Zendaya's role in Dune. Chani. Jenna Ortega is pretty sure she auditioned for Zendaya's role in Dune. The Beetlejuice actress said when she was 15, she went in for the interview. I think it was Chani. I think it was Zendaya's, Ortega recalled in a BuzzFeed interview. But they weren't saying that. Everything was very secret. Ortega added that she remembers being really excited because Denis Villeneuve is one of her favorite filmmakers. She never officially had anything confirmed, which is really how a lot of these big box office blockbuster films go. People who audition don't really know what the movie is. A lot of the time they're not given really real character names. They're not given a real title. I don't know, maybe sometimes they're not even given like the real script. They're just giving like a random thing. I've seen some like audition tapes for other big blockbusters, which a movie I'll talk about and what else I watched, but The Batman. I have seen like some of the footage of the screen test between Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, who we'll also talk about today, and they actually are reading dialogue from the film, and I would assume that comes later in the audition process when you've like really moved through the rounds and then you're doing official screen tests instead of just like the preliminary auditions. But really fascinating to, I don't know, just never talk about that before now that the 2 movies have come out. I think it's actually kind of nice of her, or maybe she's just clued in now after seeing the 2 movies. Like, could you imagine be sitting in a movie theater and maybe she did get like the real script and she's just sitting in the audience watching Dune Part 2 or Dune Part 1 a couple of years ago. She's like, what do I know that from? What do I know that line from? That phrase sounds really familiar. I don't remember reading the book. Did I audition for this movie? That's got to be so weird as an actor. I feel like that's what, non-actor people or non-performer people, even directors that don't get a project that they were maybe going to go for, going and seeing the movie after. It's got to be strange. Or maybe for just the actors, you've just read blank pages and you don't know what the title is, and then you go and see a movie and you're like, wait a minute, did I audition for this? And you don't realize you auditioned for it. That's another experience that I will, I'll never get in life, but that's just kind of fascinating to think about. Okay, one final story before we get deep in the weeds on Blink Twice. Sandra Huller, Riz Ahmed, John Goodman, Michael Stahlberg, Jesse Plemons, and Sophie Wilde are on board for the untitled Alejandro Iñárritu Tom Cruise movie at Warner Brothers. So Alejandro Iñárritu, he's, a crazy good director. He did The Revenant, he did Birdman. He's a phenomenal filmmaker. Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, of course, and Tom Cruise now has this deal at Warner Brothers that he's going to be making original films with them, which I really loved. Same with Timothée Chalamet. We've talked about it plenty of times in recent episodes. So they have deals where they get to be producers and star in original films and develop original projects, which I just think that's like super old school Hollywood, and I love it. That's something that's of the old school Hollywoodness that's really cool. Well, it looks like Iñárritu's movie with Tom Cruise has assembled a absolutely star-studded cast. There's the 4-time Oscar-winning filmmaker's untitled movie for Warner Brothers and Legendary Entertainment, counts Oscar-nominated Anatomy of a Fall actress Sandra Huller, Emmy winner John Goodman, Michael Stuhlbarg, Oscar nominee Jesse Plemons, and Talk to Me actress Sophie Wilde. Oscar winner Riz Ahmed is in final negotiations to join the cast. So again, it's not actually confirmed what the movie is. I'm very interested to see Tom Cruise if it's not an action movie. I'd really loved him to like get back into dramatic roles. He had that movie, what was it, American Made, and I've never seen it, but I've seen so many people tweeting about it recently, so I would be very interested to go and watch that, because Tom Cruise is also a very good dramatic actor. He's not just an action guy. Like, people forget he was in A Few Good Men or whatever. He is a dramatic actor as well. He's also very funny. Like, he was in Tropic Thunder. I know he's a lunatic in real life, and I don't praise him as a person at all. I don't think he's my best friend or anything, right? Try to switch off that brain, which we should all do. Interesting. I think that cast sounds really good. That's all performers. Talk to Me is the only film on there. The person I wasn't sure who she is, but I mean, Jesse Plemons, loved him in Kinds of Kindness. Riz Ahmed is a magical performer. I love him. And so I remember seeing him in Rogue One. I think that was the first movie I ever watched with him, and I was like, who is this guy? He is good. Lots of good news this week coming out, but it's time to talk Blink Twice, as I said before. Of course, timestamps below. If you haven't seen a trailer, if you don't know what this movie is about, don't watch the trailer, just maybe read the synopsis if you want to really go in super blind. But if you have seen the trailer and you have read the synopsis or whatever, and you're still thinking about seeing it, I would still pause this, go watch it, go enjoy it at a nice comfy theater, go and see Blink Twice, come back, listen to the episode. Let's get into Blink Twice. So before we get into the minds behind Blink Twice, I think it is maybe important that I do read the trigger warning for the film. I think it was very heavy subject matter and some very disturbing stuff. So they posted a trigger warning on all their social medias. They show it before the film, with, some other films have not been doing, like It Ends With Us, and some of their stars have been parading around acting like it's a love story when it's really a story about abuse. Anyways, Blink Twice, this is their official statement. Trigger warning, we are proud to finally share Blink Twice with audiences in theaters worldwide this week. Blink Twice is a psychological thriller about the abuse of power. While this is a fictionalized movie, it contains mature themes and depictions of violence, including sexual violence. This may be upsetting or triggering for some viewers. For resources that offer support, visit blinktwiceresources.com. All right, so let's get into it. Blink Twice is a 2024 thriller crime film. It's an hour and 42 minutes, so again, it's a pretty brisk runtime. Currently has 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think it has like a 60% audience score. It is directed by Zoë Kravitz, and in fact, it is her directorial debut. The synopsis of the film is, when tech billionaire Slater King meets cocktail waitress Frida at his fundraising gala, he invites her to join him and his friends on a dream vacation on his private island. A strange things start to happen. Frida questions her reality. The film, of course, stars Naomi Ackie as Frida, Channing Tatum as Slater King, Christian Slater as Vic, Simon Rex as Cody, Adria Arjona as Sarah, Kyle MacLachlan's in this, Haley Joel Osment as Tom, Gina Davis, Elia Shawkat as Jess, Levon Hawke, and Liz Carabel Sierra. So a really star-studded cast. In fact, it's funny that the main character's name is Slater King, and Christian Slater is as well in the film. So Blink Twice, let's get into it. Well, non-spoilers, of course. I have so much to say in non-spoilers because the spoilers of this film are basically all the big twists and all the plot devices and the big character moments. I'm saving that for spoilers, of course. So if you're still sticking around this far and you want to listen to the non-spoiler section, there's absolutely tons I will have to talk about. Blink Twice, this was okay. I walked out with mixed feelings, but I was actually entertained. It's entertaining, but it all feels a little bit borrowed and derivative. And I'm not to say that we can't have another movie like the one we're watching, and you can't have films that aren't inspired or feel a little borrowed from other ideas or inspired by other ideas. But there is times in this film where it is very easy to call where it's going. There's very clear twists coming because we have been exposed opposed to other films that are telling a very similar story or have very similar, this felt like a great cultural, I saw actually a really great tweet that put it into good words. This is like a blender of all these social commentary films of the last few years, or the social commentary thriller revenge stories of the last few years, kind of. And I think that is probably the best way to describe this film, but we'll get more into that. I think let's start with the cast, because there are some really great performances in this. I will start with Naomi Ackie as Frida. She's great. I mean, look, the character isn't anything new, but I think she is doing a really great job. Naomi Ackie, I think she has a lot to do in this film. She is the main character, and she goes through some insane stuff, and it never feels over the top or inauthentic. I think she picks her moments to go big really well. I think she has such a balanced performance in this. I think she's actually so reserved and curious in parts and kind of bottled up, which I just love. I think Naomi Ackie was really good as Frida in this. I don't think, like I said, her character is not anything really brand new, but I don't think that's her fault. It's not like she's trying to play like other people have played similar stories, and I will not name any similar stories as to avoid spoilers of where this film goes, but that's not her fault at all. I think with what she's given in this story, I think she does perfectly with. Channing Tatum is Slater King. I think he's good. He's a bit of a chameleon in this movie, and I can't quite figure out like what his final form is. There's a lot of scenes with Slater King where you're wondering what type of billionaire he is. Maybe I'll leave it at that, or that's as far as I'll go. He gives a very interesting performance in that you don't really know scene to scene what's going to happen with him. Adria Arjona as Sarah. I loved her in The Hitman, and I'm loving her in stuff in general. I mean, Andor, she was so phenomenal in that show. I forgot to mention that in the Hitman review. She was really great in the Hitman as well. She's kind of awesome in this as well. Her and Naomi Ackie are my two favorite performances in this film. They have so many great character moments, and I'm excited. I feel like she's had like a couple of big projects now, and she's really going to start getting some major roles. Same with, Naomi Ackie was in Star Wars, the Rise of Skywalker or whatever, and she was just like another character added, and she kind of came into that franchise at the wrong time. She's a really great performer as well, and I know these people have, of course, done other films, but I think they're going to be getting a lot more big budget mainstream offers right now. Elia Shawkat, who is in Arrested Development, that's what I know her from. She plays Jess in this film. She's really great. I mean, the rest of the cast, you have Christian Slater is great in this, of course. Simon Rex is very good. Kyle MacLachlan is good. Haley Joel Osment is really oddly kind of meta to his own life in this film. Gina Davis, who I love, she's really great in this, and Levon Hawke. Like, the whole cast it's a really great cast, to be honest. Everybody is very good in this. A really balanced cast. I like how we're kind of getting performers that haven't done as much big stuff versus these kind of experienced performers that have been around the block a few times, like Haley Joel Osment and Christian Slater. So I think a well-balanced cast is what I would say. Let's talk about the directing. Like I said, Zoë Kravitz's directorial debut. She also co-wrote, and I will say Zoë Kravitz absolutely has a big future in directing. The first 30 minutes of the film, she's finding her voice kind of, and then she really hits her stride for the rest of the film, and there's some really great filmmaking that you would see from a lot of very experienced directors. There's some really interesting shots, some very interesting visual storytelling, and I think she really nailed it. I was so pleasantly surprised. I mean, she's extremely talented in everything I've seen her in, and she's worked with some phenomenal directors, of course, so it is no surprise that she is probably a sponge for knowledge. She's lived with very creative people her entire life, of course. I was so impressed with what Zoë Kravitz did with this story. The first 30 minutes, there is kind of a style you have to get used to. It does feel like there's perhaps a few too many cuts here or random movements that feel a little bit discombobulated, and I wasn't huge on that, and a lot of it felt a little bit unnecessary to me, but there's kind of like this switch that is flipped where you feel a real creative voice kind of come in, and I loved it. I loved it a lot. So we've had two really solid directorial debuts from phenomenal performers this year in Dev Patel and Zoë Kravitz. I really do have to commend her because I was very impressed with. Sure, I mean, look, no directorial debut is probably perfect, and the first 30 minutes did feel a little bit less interesting and a little bit disjointed with the directing, but then I feel like she really finds herself, and I loved what she did with the rest of the movie, and there's so much interesting stuff to pick apart. The story. It's a bit of a familiar premise, and it's still a great premise, but it's a crime thriller, I guess. I was never shaking my fists and being like, I don't believe you. Like Cuckoo last week was a little bit frustrating at times, thinking back on that film of there's just kind of unbelievable moments in that feel extremely far-fetched and undeserved and unearned. In this film, I was never really, there was perhaps one moment, but I'll save that for spoilers, where at first I thought this is a little bit far-fetched and a bit too much of a mental hurdle for me. I think the major problem of this film, and I have a couple nitpicks as well, but I think the major problem that's hurting this film and how the public will perceive this film is, like I said before, kind of a cultural blender of commentary films that have come out recently. I think if this film came out 15 years ago, it would have blown people's goddamn minds. But with films we've gotten in the last 8 years, I want to say, you kind of are familiar with the type of story we're watching, and it's hard to, you really got to shake things up to break that mold. And that's nothing against, Zoë Kravitz and saying that she's stealing ideas or borrowing ideas. It's just like, it feels like this film just kind of came out at the wrong time, because maybe people have gotten a little bit used to these twists. I'm not going to say tired of these twists, because you can't, what it's trying to do, you can't be really tired of the subject that it's talking about. It's an important subject to talk about, but it just feels like the method we're getting this in, it's like, okay, I think I know where this is going, and I'll leave it at that. I mean, spoilers will get into it more. The dialogue, there is a bit of a tonal problem in this film, and that comes a lot from maybe the dialogue. Tonally, it's a little bit messy. The dialogue at times can be a little, he's right behind me, isn't he? Or so that just happened. And it feels a kind of a little bit disjointed for a movie with such a dark subject matter, not spoiling anything. It has some oddly cheesy moments, and of course, you can have comedic moments in the darkest of films. And like I just watched Schindler's List, where there are actually some jokes in that film that you do laugh at. Any film can be funny, but it's just, they feel a little bit tonally shifting in this film. They feel like they're trying to, lift rocks, and it feels like possibly in the wrong times as well. I think it needs to pick a lane, this film. You need to either stick with that dramatic thriller and really be so controlled and so reserved with your comedic moments, or really show restraint and like just let them leak through naturally, instead of, I think what we got is just these random comedic moments that kind of felt, I don't know, it kind of felt a little bit out of place for me. I think there is a lot of authenticity to this story, which I liked. It really felt like a true tale with the subject matter. It felt like this is real world, but it didn't feel like, I want to escape from this in my real world, and it's so heavy-handed. I think it's actually done, everything in this is done in a very like appropriately weighted handed manner. Is that a correct term I just used? Appropriately weighted handed manner. It wasn't like you watch a movie like Don't Look Up, the Adam McKay film. It's just so obvious with its themes. It's beating you over a head with the, such close examples or parodies of who it's talking about. Whereas this just felt like kind of really natural at all parts, and I seriously like that. We have a classic apology from a billionaire, the friend group that all feel less important than this billionaire guy, like a Mr. Beast, or, these groups. I won't name other celebrities because it kind of gives away what direction this goes in, but, and there's this kind of building tension from about the 20-minute mark until the third act big reveal swing type thing, and I think the movie really did pace it well. After those first 20 to 30 minutes where it's kind of finding its feet, I really enjoyed the pacing of the film, and at no point was I feeling like, okay, we're getting a huge exposition dump. And I think when we do get the big reveal, because there is of course a big reveal in this film, you kind of know what it is, but you appreciate the manner they're delivering it in. Like, it all feels kind of, it's been slowly revealed over a time, or over like 30 minutes in the movie, we kind of slowly are revealed to this. One conversation kind of suddenly explains all the things in the past, and it kind of indicates what all these plot devices and conversations or pieces of dialogue, just certain phrases or items in the film, it all suddenly makes sense now. It's not like one person just listing everything that's happened, everything that we've seen, and having flashbacks of what's happening and explaining what the big twist is of the film. It's not done in a heavy-handed manner, which I really appreciated. I thought it was done in a very great way. I just feel like there's so much you can really dissect in this film, especially in spoilers, which I'm about to get into. But look, all in all, it's not a perfect film. I do think it does feel a little bit derivative at times, and you're kind of, especially if you are like a really casual or extremely committed moviegoer and you have watched a lot of certain types of films that I will reveal in spoilers, if you have watched all of those films, you really do know where this one is going, and I guarantee you can almost predict the ending to a T. So that's, maybe that's a downgrade, that it doesn't feel extremely original, but I think the delivery method and the crafting of the film is really what I enjoyed about this the most, and the performances were just really great in general. I mean, Naomi Ackie, I've really, since I saw it yesterday, I've just been loving, certain things I've remembered from the film of like, oh yeah, she was so great in that one scene. Same with Adria Arjona. She's really great in it as well. I mean, the whole cast was very good, but particularly those two really stuck out to me. So look, overall, I was entertained. What more do you want from a film? I didn't walk out angry or I didn't feel cheated. It's just that nothing felt very original sometimes, and it all felt kind of contrived from other ideas, but still great directing. I'm extremely excited to see what Zoë Kravitz directs next. Also, the original title was supposed to be Pussy Island for this film, and it got changed because apparently it did not test well with the public, and I think that's a really hilarious title, and I guess people just like Zoë Kravitz and Channing Tatum have both actually highlighted. I guess the public just isn't really ready to see the word pussy on a poster, but a really funny original title that I think Blink Twice is still a very good title, especially when you realize when it's set in the film, like you really, oh my god, it's kind of chilling. But look, I gave this a 3 out of 5. Decent movie going experience. It's a very haunting, dramatic kind of crime thriller, and I would recommend seeing this. It's a good film that I think people will really enjoy. But let's move into spoilers. Okay, spoiler time. Here we go. Big spoiler time. Tune off if you don't want to know any spoilers from the film. Here's every movie I was reminded of when I was watching this film. I wrote them down as soon as I got into my car. Saltburn, Get Out, Don't Worry Darling, Promising Young Woman, Midsummer, The Menu. Okay, when I say all those films, if you were to right now go and see the movie, I feel like you would be able to directly predict where it is going. But let's get into I think it's spoilers. I really want to talk about the big reveal, but then I really want to talk about kind of the plot devices that were used. So the big reveal is that Slater and his friends are drugging and raping these women every night. So they're drugging them so they will forget what's happening every evening. They do drugs after dinner, but also they're all wearing this perfume that makes them forget things based on the drugs they're taking. So they will instantly like get high and forget anything that's happened. Very disturbing. The trigger warning for the film was probably, it is a good idea to kind of highlight. I do understand kind of both sides of the argument that the rating system is there for a reason. And when it says rated R, it will say why it's rated R. Coarse language, mature subject matter, viewer discretion is advised, or there are scenes of, sexual violence and stuff like that, which maybe the rating system can perhaps get a little more precise in its language of what, content warning. But I mean, if a movie doesn't have a trigger warning and you read like what it's rated and you kind of know what the film's about, that's good too. And there's a reason films are rated certain ways, but also the trigger warning for this in particular, a film that talks about a very particular subject matter relating to things that are very active in our life right now. Epstein Island is basically what this film is. And having read the synopsis, I knew where this film was going. I said, okay, tech billionaire, he has a private island. There's these people partying. They invite these women to the island. For me, it was very clear where this was going. And especially after reading the trigger warning, it's very clear what the big twist is of the film, which it's kind of a strange thing. And I'm not like against the trigger warning or anything. I absolutely could not care less. It's good that people kind of maybe know what the dark subject matter they're going to see in a film is for people that have gone through this. And I think it's an important thing that needs to be talked about. The big twist I sort of saw coming, maybe I wasn't totally like to a T predicting everything and what the plot devices were that I'll get into in a second, but I did think like, oh yeah, they're definitely drugging these women and that's why they're so into drinking all day, doing drugs every single night, and the women all run off at night and we're not really seeing anything after that. I knew, okay, definitely these men are definitely taking advantage of all of the women, because one thing I noticed in particular in the mornings, the men don't seem nearly as hungover as the women for me. Some of them, they were still hungover at times, but they didn't seem nearly as messed up the next day as the women. And at one point you see a bruise on Sandra's arm. Adria Arjona's character, Sandra, you see a bruise on her arm, and that's when I instantly knew. That was like before even someone pointed out the bruise on her arm and she said, oh, I must have hit it on something. I knew immediately, and it's very weirdly shown, shown in lens. You can see kind of a focus on the bruise before it's even mentioned to anyone. It's just very clearly displayed. Also, there's a stain on Frida's dress that goes away when she wakes up later in the night. and it's like, okay, clearly her clothes have been taken off of her and she doesn't remember anything. So that's when I think I kind of piece things together of they are definitely doing things to these women. Yeah, it's a very dark film, and there's a particular scene where things are revealed because she gets her memories back, and it's very haunting. My heart was actually racing for about 10 minutes in this film. I could not calm down. It was so tense, and it really had me hooked in when Frida's starting to get her memories back, and we have the big reveal, and there's this it's not like extremely gratuitous and like hard to watch, but it is dark. You do see kind of the women being chased around the compound, Adria Arjona's character tied to the table and being raped in it. So it is a very shocking scene. If Frida is getting these memories back and she's seeing these things, shouldn't the audience see it as well, what's happening? It shouldn't be hidden from her because we're supposed to be in Frida's point of view. She is our lens in this story. She is our point of view in this story. But let's get into the plot devices, because I actually do think there are some really great plot devices in this film that are very well placed. Some better than others, and I'll talk about the ones maybe I didn't like. But there's these red bags they're given, and they're given to all the guests that visit the island. All like Slater's therapist, all of his friends get these red bags that are gift bags, and they actually have, it's revealed slowly over the film, that they have the perfume inside that help the women forget, or that make the women forget. It's not helpful to them. It makes the women forget everything that's happening to them. So the red bags and the perfume, I thought those were very interesting plot devices. The perfume one isn't really explained, but my understanding of it is that there's these native plants on the island that they're probably making the perfume from the scent of those plants, and that's what makes these women forget. There's also these used items when Frida gets to her room. There's all this stuff that's in her room and used. I didn't necessarily think that she had been on the island before, but I was like, okay, they're definitely keeping people here in these rooms and giving them kind of very restricted access to things, and that sort of just was like a strange clue to me that, okay, yeah, something's wrong here. That's really strange. Frida has a scar on her eye, and Slater says, how'd you get that scar? She's like, I don't remember. And at first I thought, oh, she's like just saying I don't remember because she doesn't want to talk about it, but she actually doesn't remember. And it's later revealed in the film that Slater's about to take advantage of her. He chases her down, yanks her by her hair and her dress, and pushes her. She hits her head on a rock, and that's how she gets the scar. So when she said that to Slater, he knew what the scar was from, and they have met before, and he's brought her to the island before, the year before, probably serving the gala, because she had worked the gala the previous year. I think there's some seriously phenomenal plot devices or little things that are planted throughout the film that really make sense once the, albeit not mind-blowing reveal. It's kind of exactly what you think it's going to be. Like, you're almost going into it. It's kind of that anticlimactic, anti-twist. Like, you think there's going to be this huge twist. Maybe it'll get supernatural or something like that. And you're like, oh, it actually is just what I thought this was going to be, kind of an Epstein Island situation. So yeah, very interesting. There's, as I said, the flowers are, I think, what's making the perfume, but the antidote to that is this snake venom. So there's these, I would say there are indigenous to the island, these people, and that's why Slater King has kind of colonized this island and bought the island, and the locals are now working for him. So it's also a very interesting commentary on who's working there. And the snake venom, they have this one woman that's catching the snakes and killing them, and she's putting the venom on the side. Well, if you drink the snake venom, it brings your memories back and counteracts the flowers. So it's interesting that they're catching all of these snakes and trying to get rid of them because maybe they don't want people to remember and they'll only be able to forget. But I really liked the use of the venom and the flowers. I feel like the location played just as much of a character in the film or an important part of the film. The location itself was a plot device. Okay, just quickly before I really want to talk about the ending, mostly Red Robin. There's this woman that works at the compound, and she keeps saying to Frida, Red Robin. Frida doesn't know, like, what the hell, why do you keep saying Red Robin to me? That kind of bothered me because the big reveal is that she recognizes Frida because Frida has like this Instagram page where she paints her nails with certain animals on them. Like, it's a cute Instagram page. And last time she was there last year, she had red robins on her nails. Why wouldn't the woman just grab her nails and be like, Red Robin, and shake her hand? She doesn't. She just keeps saying Red Robin to her, and she's like, what? I don't know. That just kind of felt a little far-fetched. I also saw this comment on Reddit that said, I wonder if the fishing trip was a cover to dispose of Jess's body. So Frida's friend Jess gets bit by a snake, so she starts to remember and says, I think something's wrong with this island. That night when they're attacking all of the women, They actually kill Jess. And the next day they go for a fishing trip, and it's just the guys that go. Someone on Reddit made a really great, perhaps, hunch that they went on that fishing trip all of a sudden because they wanted to dispose of Jess's body. And I think that is the case. The Frida and Sarah team up really worked for me. As I said, Naomi Aki and Adria Arjona are just so great. Sarah has this really great line in the film talking about women competing with each other, that women are taught to program to compete with each other and are not supposed to team up because that's seen as bad. And Sarah's character is really interesting because she was on this like reality show called Hot Babes Survivor for 8 seasons. So she has all these really great survival skills and natural talents and stuff. So she's just a really dope character. But I really just loved their team up. Originally, Sarah has a lot of jealousy of Frida, and it looks like she's kind of jealous of how close Slater is to her. Then once there is the big reveal, they do team up, and it's really great that they never turn on each other. I like that. As I talked about last week in Cuckoo, you have 2 characters, you're loving their team up, and then all of a sudden one of them turns on the other, and it just feels like it really disrupts the rhythm of the story. Well, I really just loved the team up in this film, although we don't really get a clear indication of what happens to Sarah after the island at the end of the film, which, let's talk about the end of the film. I think that is perhaps the part of the film when I walked out that I was unsure how I felt about. That's what I really had mixed feelings about, other than perhaps all the borrowed elements, or what I felt was borrowed at least, or kind of, it was a fun ride, but I knew kind of where everything was going. So the end of the film, everybody on the island dies except Slater King, Frida, and Sarah. Frida puts in Slater King's vape juice. She puts the perfume so he forgets everything, which is a very interesting choice to me, that you would want him to forget everything. And the final bit of the movie is the next year's gala. Slater King doesn't remember anything. We see his therapist again. He doesn't remember who the therapist is. And it turns out that Frida has become CEO of his company and is now controlling Slater King to do everything she wishes. And first I was kind of like, first of all, how did they get off the island? I would have liked maybe if the story ended on the island, which I saw a lot of sentiment online being the same. And also this, I don't know, a lot of people were critical of like this quote girl boss ending, where there's this like girl boss song that plays and Frida's now the CEO. It's supposed to be like this epic ending maybe at first, and that's why I was a little, really, she's just like now a CEO and she doesn't report him to the police. They do report the therapist or whatever, but Slater doesn't remember anything like that. It is a very interesting choice, and at first I was kind of baffled by it and be like, I don't know if that ending stick the landing. But then I read some interviews with Zoë Kravitz, and she talked about the ending intentionally being kind of open-ended morally, that you're not sure if it's a happy or a dark ending. Is it continuing the cycle of abuse? Is Frida now becoming the abuser? Who is to say? Is this a happy and justified ending, that someone who was abused over 2 years now kind of has control over the situation, but is she not now abusing her own abuser? And is she enjoying this position of power now fairly? What is justice in this situation? I mean, she feels that she probably has justice for herself, but also narratively about the story. You know, Frida is someone who has always been obsessed with rich people, and she had this obsession with Slater King before. You know, the opening of the film is her scrolling her phone and she's not even like blinking. She's just so into like all this celebrity stuff on her phone. So you can see Frida has always been obsessed with rich people, and now she has a chance to enjoy that position. So I really thought it was an interesting story choice from Zoë Kravitz to go with a kind of morally open-ended story. And as maybe Zoë Kravitz said this, or I read a really great comment on Reddit talking about attraction to power, that Frida has an attraction to power. That's why she likes Slater King at the party before she has any knowledge of her past with him. A very interesting ending to the film, I have to say. I think this was an enjoyable film overall. Like, I actually had a really good time watching it. I don't think it's perfect. There's parts that really don't work for me or feel a little bit far-fetched. Dialogue kind of choppy at times, tonally a little bit over the place at times, but, you know, ignoring all of the borrowed and kind of derivative feeling of the film. So this is still a very interesting story with, I think, interesting conversations and questions that it asks of us and our society, and this moment that we're in right now of holding billionaires and those in power accountable, that they're not any better than us. They should treat us as we treat them. We should all be treated equally and with equal respect, you know? And it was really interesting also seeing this film after Chapel Roan posted last week talking about people harassing her and her family and fan interactions, and how she really does want space. Like, she is also just a normal person, and just because people really like her art and she's sharing art doesn't give, just because you're a fan, it doesn't give you the right to have ownership over her and ownership over her public life. Like, she should still be able to live her life. So I don't know. This was, I mean, I gave it a 3 out of 5, but it is a 3 out of 5 that I really liked. I think it has its issues, but it's a great film that will really make you kind of reflect inward and outward in our society as well, and ask a lot of really interesting questions, and just sparks a lot of interesting conversations that I think you and your friends, you and your family, you and anybody can really talk about, of what you take away from this film and where we are as a culture right now. But that's been Blink Twice, a film I would recommend seeing it. It's a good theater experience. I think definitely when it's on streaming, check it out. But if you can, go to the theater and enjoy this. I didn't even talk about the cinematography. It's a gorgeous looking movie. I actually really thought it was a gorgeous film with amazing directing, but also amazing cinematography. So go check out Blink Twice. Now let's get into what else I watched. Well, because I'm recording this a little bit early today, I haven't watched tons since I recorded my last episode, but I did watch a few things. The first thing I watched was The Batman. Going into Zoë Kravitz's film, I was like, oh man, I love Zoë Kravitz. She's such a great performer. She's so good in The Batman. Also, I just had Saturday night free. I wanted to watch one of my 4 favorite films. I was like, tonight I don't feel like watching anything new. I just want to sit down, watch, I don't know, a comfort movie, I guess. I just want to watch, you know, when you just want to watch a movie you've seen 100 times, and a movie you enjoy, and you know like every story beat, every line, every phrasing, every mannerism of the film. It was one of those nights where I'm like, I just want to have some good movie snacks. I want to enjoy, you know, one of the last Saturdays of summer and just watch a great movie. And that's The Batman for me. I think The Batman is my favorite film ever, which is crazy. It only came out like 4 years ago, but I've now seen it 8 times. I think I saw it 3 times in theaters or 2 times in theaters, and then a shitload of times I've watched it at home. I just love everything about it. And as I've said a billion times on this podcast, I'm a huge Batman fan. I have a Batman half sleeve tattoo. Like, it goes from my elbow to my wrist. I have a big Batman sleeve. It's a character I've always loved. As I said, as a kid, I loved Superman. I loved superheroes. I loved, you know, make-believe and imagining. But I also loved Batman because what he stood for justice. And sure, he's brutal, but he never gives up. And his superpower is never giving up and persevering. And that's something I just like love about a hero. And the Batman is my favorite interpretation of that character in live action. I think Robert Pattinson is such a great Batman, especially after watching Batman the animated series. There's so much just spiritually and kind of feeling wise that feels like such a great continuation or like embodiment of Batman the animated series, and a lot of great Batman comics that I loved, like The Long Halloween or Batman Year One. He's a very young and rough Batman that doesn't know his limits yet. I mean, honestly, there isn't a Batman movie I don't like, really, other than maybe the Zack Snyder ones are my least favorite, and Batman and Robin, the George Clooney one. But the Batman, for me, it's flawlessly directed. The story is so great, and it's not, you know, it's this like grounded one, but it still has a lot of really fun gadget Batman-y moments that I loved. The Batman voice is awesome. All of this, you know, supporting characters and performances, flawless. It's the best looking Batman movie for me. I think Greg Fraser knocks it out of the park. I have watched the Batmobile chase with the Batman, with Robert Pattinson's Batman and the Penguin. Just that 10-minute YouTube clip that Warner Brothers posted, I have watched that probably 100 times per month. Like, that is something I just will randomly throw on because it just gives me kind of a creative motivation of like, oh God, you can make fun things like this that are so exhilarating. Every time I watch the Batman, I take something different away from it. This time what really stuck out was the Alfred and Bruce Wayne relationship. They have a very bad relationship at the moment, and you can see Bruce not realizing that by endangering himself, he's also going to make Alfred lose someone he really cares about. Like when Thomas and Martha Wayne died that night, Bruce didn't just lose his parents, but Alfred lost his best friends or the people, you know, his family. He doesn't have any other family. And Bruce, the night he thinks Alfred is going to die from the Riddler attack on Bruce Wayne when he opens that bomb, it's just like, it's so, I don't know, it's funny how you watch a movie you've already seen 7 times and still other things like find new ways to come back to you. It's the same thing with music. I find when you listen to albums over years or over months, you can take different, you know, notes away or sounds away, or you're just kind of re-listening and you're like, oh, I never heard that background drum or that one cymbal or whatever it is, you know. And films are the exact same way. Books are the same way. Everything, you know, you revisit to and you take different messages away with. And that's just what I love. You know, I just felt like Saturday night, I'm going to watch one of my favorites tonight. I mean, I'm literally looking at my phone right now and my background is the Batman. It's Robert Pattinson at the end. I mean, that whole third act, I don't get. Like, that's been, I think, the thing that's most criticized in the film is the third act. To me, that third act is everything, where he says vengeance and anger won't change the past, and talks about scars, and oh my god, I could literally do a whole like 4-hour lecture on the Batman. It's so insane. I love that film so much. I cannot wait for part 2. I hope to God we get it. Matt Tomlinson just last week, the co-writer of the Batman Part 2, talked about, it's filming early next year. Matt is such a craftsman. And anyways, the Batman, always 5 stars for me. Okay, I also watched Tim and Eric. I found this YouTube live stream randomly on Sunday that I watched for like 4 hours of just Tim and Eric moments and sketches. If you don't know, I'm a big Tim Heidecker fan. I love his music, but also I love Office Hours Live, his podcast. And Tim and Eric, I love Tim and Eric. I think it's a hilarious show. It's kind of a Mr. Show spiritual successor, or in a nice prelude to I Think You Should Leave. If you like I Think You Should Leave, you should watch Tim and Eric, because it's even more kind of random and off-brand humor, and more like just random is the most, I don't know, the most flattering thing I can say about Tim and Eric, is it's so goddamn random. You never know where anything is going to go in that show, and it's just the wildest stuff happens. I love Tim and Eric. There's one sketch I watched where this old guy, one of the neighborhood kids, like makes music, and he drops by an album, and the dad listens to it, and his life has changed. He's like, "Oh, you have such a beautiful voice," and Tim Heidecker's character is like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Rogers. I hope you like my music." And he's like so pale, and he has bleach blonde hair that stands up, and it's just, oh my god, it's hilarious. It's amazing. Tim and Eric, it's been, it ended many years ago, but it's just so funny, and they're still very good friends. Like, you can watch Office Hours. There's an episode with Eric Wareheim, and he often makes appearances. Oh man, I love Tim and Eric. Okay, I also watched 5 more episodes of the Justice League TV show. I have Amazon Prime, Stack TV, which has like old Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers shows. Stack TV is really great. Like, if you have Amazon Prime, I would totally recommend Stack TV, because there's so many shows on there. Oh my god. I just love the introduction of the origins of the Justice League and them starting up. I just watched I think it was 2 episodes or 3 episodes with Atlantis and Aquaman. It's just so wonderfully built, and they all kind of grow. I don't know. I think the Zack Snyder Justice League movie is just so quickly rushed, and they're all just immediately kind of on board with each other, and it all feels just too easy. Whereas this Justice League film, it reminds me so much of that first Avengers movies, that they do butt heads, they do fight, they can be enemies at first, and I just, oh man, I couldn't rave enough. I'm excited to watch both seasons, and I've seen Justice League Unlimited a bunch of times. I actually own the 2 seasons or 3 seasons of Justice League Unlimited. I watched that whole show. Justice League I'm really enjoying the kind of DC animated stuff right now. After watching Batman the Animated Series, Caped Crusader, I might even watch some of the animated movies, but I'm loving the Justice League shows. And I am looking for new TV shows to watch. Right now, I don't know, I've been having a nice tear of watching tons of movies recently. Like, Blink Twice was my 38th film I've seen this year of new releases, like 2024 films. I'm on a roll. Like, last year I watched, I think 40 new movies, and the year before like 30, and the year before that I think 20. So this year I honestly might go for like 60 or 70, and it's just fun watching new stuff. I finally started God Emperor, the 3rd or 4th Dune book, and it's really good so far. I think I'm about 50, 75 pages. I can't even remember, but it's really good. It's like much more, I don't know, linguistically focused rather than ecology and action and sci-fi things. It's more politics and kind of reflection on systems. So yeah, that's been what else I watched. And I think that is going to do it for episode 33, Blink Twice. A very dark subject matter within the film, but it's a very fun and important film to talk about, a very stimulating film to talk about. Like, there's just so much you could pick apart in it, really great plot devices or whatever, or just themes that are really interesting discussions and questions that we should be thinking about and contemplating in our world today. But that is going to do it for episode 33. As always, please rate and review the show 5 stars. Give it a great review on all the streaming platforms, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. You can give it 5 stars, share it with a friend, share it to social media, share it with whoever, share it with the world. They can hear my maybe bad takes or takes that you seem to agree with, and then you can get shut down and they can blame you for having bad takes, like that idiot you heard on the podcast or that genius you heard on the podcast. Maybe you get a promotion at work because you shared this podcast with your boss. You never know. You might owe me some money in the future. We are also on YouTube, so go check out the YouTube channel. You can subscribe there, hit the notification bell so you know when a podcast comes out every single Monday. Also, I post shorts on there. Go like and subscribe, of course. Comment down below. What did you think of Blink Twice? What's been your favorite movie of the summer? I'm curious. Next week, it's September. Summer's going to be over. What's been your favorite movie of the summer? It doesn't have to be a huge blockbuster. What do you think was the blockbuster movie of the summer? But what's been your favorite movie? I want to know your opinion. I care. Hey, come here. I want to know what your favorite movie has been this summer, okay? Tell me. Sorry about that. You can also email the show to get in touch with us at watcherofallthings@gmail.com. We also have social media where I'm going to be pushing a new one. You can follow the TikTok page. That is watcher.of.all.things. You can follow the Instagram page, which is just Watcher of All Things. And the one I'm going to be pushing now is Threads. You can follow the show on Threads, which is like Meta's version of Twitter. Threads is pretty awesome. You can follow the page there, Watcher of All Things. Go like, comment, all that good stuff. What's been your favorite blockbuster movie this summer? What's been the movie that maybe blew your expectations most? It doesn't have to be your favorite, but what's a movie perhaps you thought it was going to be amazing? You saw it, complete pile of dog crap, or you saw a movie that maybe I wasn't interested. Did you think, oh, this is gonna blow chunks, and then you watch it and then you're like, know what? This isn't half bad. I didn't love it, or you did love it. What did you think? Just get in touch with the show. Give me all your movie, TV recommendations, maybe. What show should I start watching? Are there any new shows that are currently on right now that I should be checking out that I'm missing? You can also follow my Letterboxd account where I have all of my lists. You can see my 2024 ranked list. It's Kiki J70. That's KIKIJ70. The link for all this good stuff will be in the description. Of course, all the social media pages. Next week, despite not being Halloween, we are reviewing Beetlejuice, which I thought would have been coming out in October, like October 15th to roll into Halloween. And turns out it's September 6th that Beetlejuice is coming out. So I'm going on a Wednesday IMAX screening. So I'm looking forward to that. Happy Labor Day, everybody. I hope you had a great summer. It was so fun. I say every week. I say this every week. Look, I'm a little bit of a softie. This is so much fun for me. I love just doing this, putting my voice out there. It's such a fun little like journal thing for me to think creatively, but also think critically about what I'm watching. And it's a whole new way to watch things as well. But my favorite part is not just watching the movies and the TV shows and doing this. It's hearing from you, whether it be my friends, my family, strangers. There's so many wholesome moments, and I've had only great experiences and feedback from this. And, my brother, constructive criticism, of course. Hey, could you add timestamps? That was a good call, and I hate admitting when my brother's right. But seriously, your messages to me, I hope you know, I don't just read them once, like the message, respond back, oh yeah, thanks. I read them a billion times. It fuels me every week. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week for episode 34, Beetlejuice. I can't say it one more time or he's gonna show up. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you in the next one.